Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Learning Network session. For those of you who don't know us, Pathways to Resilience is a national initiative to promote healing-centered, trauma-responsive policies, programs, and practices across states and counties and communities throughout the nation. We host regular Learning Network sessions on an array of topics that are open to the public. This session will be recorded and we will post takeaways and related resources on the website afterwards. Today's topic is about the impact of social media on youth safety and well-being. I'm very excited that we have a wonderful set of speakers joining us. I do want to let folks know who haven't been on these sessions before that these are intended to be highly interactive. It will be done in a Q&A format. But if you've got questions, you can either go off mute when I queue for questions, or you're welcome to leverage the chat. Everyone can see the chat, and you can ask questions to our speakers as you're interested. Today, we are going to start by hearing from Utah First Lady Abby Cox. Mrs. Cox is a member of the Pathways to Resilience Steering Committee, and she's the one who actually recommended this topic for our session today. So we are very grateful for your leadership and active participation in our national work and within Utah to support the well-being of children. We're also going to hear from Amy Winder Newton, who's a senior advisor to Governor Cox and director of Utah's Office of Families. Dr. Sarah Coyne, who's a professor of human development at the School of Family Life at Brigham Young University, and Holly Rawlings, who's a leader of research and family education at Gab Wireless. So we have a fantastic set of speakers who are going to tell you about different challenges and strategies that you can consider within your states and communities. So Mrs. Cox, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to you for your opening remarks.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate this and really appreciate all of you being here and taking your time to discuss this really important topic. We have some great speakers, so I will be brief because I am not an expert in this field, but we need to listen to the experts, which are Sarah, Holly, and Amy here today. But I come at this in two different ways, or maybe three, I guess, as you know, as the First Lady of the state, you know, I feel a duty to really look out and see the most vulnerable, and our children and our students are the most vulnerable. And I come at this also as a former teacher and a passionate teacher advocate. And what we're seeing in classrooms is so disturbing. And what teachers are telling me, what educators from all over our state and the country are saying is this is a huge problem. And I think we all realize that sort of, I don't know, we're all coming to this saying there is a link where we're seeing the research and it's undeniable. We can't deny it any longer that it is a huge problem with the mental health of our children. And then I guess I'm coming at it from a third way. And the most important probably is that I'm a mom. And as a mother, I have three adult children, three adult sons, and one 17-year-old daughter. And, you know, it was interesting at the time, you know, my kids are, when my old boys were in high school several years ago, it really, I came at it probably in a place that I shouldn't have been. But again, as a parent, we weren't prepared with the data. We weren't prepared with the effects. And it was very early on in those social media years for where our children had social media. And it was kind of a free-for-all. I mean, I did have kind of a you know, little thing where I would go in and I would just, you know, at night, they had no expectation of privacy. I own the phone. And so I did go through some of their feeds at night when they plug it in the kitchen. But, you know, other than that, there weren't a lot of parameters around their social media use. And now we know better. And so now that I have a 17-year-old daughter, and we know that this affects the mental health of our daughters even more than our sons. And so for me, you know, my daughter at this point, she doesn't have social media. I don't allow her to have social media because I do know more now, and I know the dangers, and I've seen the research. And so it is just, it's a huge issue that we all have to tackle together. So, when we came to this, and when you realize that this is a huge problem, you can't just sit back and do nothing. My husband and I are very aware and very passionate about helping our students and addressing the mental health issues of our students and our children. When we started this campaign, my husband said, it's undeniable that social media is harming our children's mental and physical health, brain chemistry, self-esteem, and more. Rates of depression, anxiety, loneliness, suicidal thoughts, and behaviors have increased in recent years. Parents need to know about these dangers so they can best help their children and teens. We encourage all Utahns to consider less screen time and more human connection. Let's disconnect to reconnect. And that's where we're at. We can't deny this any longer. And we feel like as we're coming to it as experts, as grandparents, as parents, as community members, as political leaders, we have to be able to address this, and we have to look at this data in clear-eyed and wide-eyed ways. And that's what I hope we can do today. And we can look at this through and listen to the experts that are here today. So again, thank you again for participating in this with us. And as we work together, we are going to make a difference in the lives of our children. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Cox. And speaking of data, I'd like to kick off our Q&A session with Dr. Coyne. Can you briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about what the current research is showing regarding the effects of social media on kids' mental health?
Sure, yeah. I'm so grateful to be here as well. My name is Dr. Sarah Coyne. I'm a professor in the School of Family Life at BYU. I've been studying the impact of media on children and families for more than 20 years at this point, and media's changed pretty dramatically since I first started looking into this. I've been examining the impact of social media on mental health and other behaviors since kind of Facebook was first a thing. So for a number of years now. The research is kind of mixed on this one. I know that when you open a newspaper or listen to the radio, it might seem that social media is responsible for the mental health crisis in America right now. And many studies find an effect, and many studies don't find an effect of screen time. And so as researchers, I just met with the leading researchers at the National Institute of Health in DC a couple of weeks ago, and we really talked about this and talked about maybe getting away from a focus on screen time specifically. I mean, I've personally done longitudinal research over the course of 8 years and found little effective screen time on depression or anxiety. Instead, we're trying to focus on content and context. And so what is it that teens are looking at that might have a negative effect on mental health? And what is it about social media that might have a positive effect? So in that meeting, we talked about both the positive and the negative, recognizing that social media can be both. And the other thing that we're really looking at is individual susceptibility. So this is the idea that social media might have a differential effect based on the person. What we know from research is that social media doesn't impact everybody the same way. We know it's particularly protective for marginalized communities. So for example, if you're an LGBTQ kid in your school, maybe you're the only one, maybe you have a really difficult home life, maybe you're being bullied in that school, you can find a sense of safety and connection and belonging in social media spaces. And so as researchers, we are trying to grapple with the data to try to provide recommendations that are specific to individuals, but also general enough that we can create policy decisions as well. I could keep going. I have a whole semester long class on this, but I'll stop there.
Thanks, Dr. Coyne. And, I know it sounds like it's a mixed bag of what the research is showing. I think we also all know that we only have so much control over what it is exactly that kids are able to see, and that is one of the risks that we have those controls. So Amy, I know working in state government, you all have been so active and really been a national leader in this space. I'd love it if you could introduce yourself a little bit more and talk about how your work relates to these issues.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Amy Winder Newton, and I'm a senior advisor to Governor Cox and the director of the Utah Office of Families. Governor Cox had a vision a few years ago to have an Office of Families that was specifically looking at ways that we can get upstream to some of the problems facing our youth and look at preventative ways that we can help them through strengthening families. We know when we have stronger families, we get better outcomes for kids. So we're doing things related to marriage readiness, protecting children, and supporting parents. And as the governor and I outlined our priorities for the first year, the social media issue became at the forefront of his concern and what we feel is a driver of the youth mental health crisis. He has been studying a lot of Jonathan Haidt's work. His last name is spelled Haidt. He's done collaborative reviews where he's been collecting different surveys and data and everything from other entities, and overwhelmingly shows that there is harm to children's mental health. And so we've used a lot of his data as we've looked at our own state to figure out what do we need to do. And as we've consulted with other mental health professionals in our state, as we've talked to school administrators, lots of parents, and even the kids in our state, we believe that social media is overwhelmingly causing the mental health crisis that we're seeing today. And even as we heard from our US Surgeon General this last year, he also believes that social media is a concern for the mental health of our kids. So we've done a few things in our state. I was involved in last year we passed legislation, 2 different bills. I was heavily involved in that. We also have a campaign that we've been working on too to help educate parents of the harms of social media. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Amy. Last but certainly not least, we have a practical application here with Holly. Holly, could you introduce yourself and give us a high-level overview of how Gab Wireless is working to address some of the issues with youth engagement with technology and social media in particular?
Yes, definitely. And I'm so glad to be here with these other women who are leaders and helping us understand this problem. And so I work for a company called Gab Wireless, and we are a tech company for kids. And we're founded on the premise that too much technology too soon is dangerous. And certainly a piece of that is social media. And again, because of the algorithmic, I say machinations. I have a hard time being unbiased in that regard, that kids are particularly vulnerable. And so we offer solutions and resources and education for families. And so we make devices that are social media free and that do not have an internet browser. And those range from a watch all the way up to a teen phone. I'm the mother of teenage triplets. And so I am, in the thick of the begging and the, and just, it's so nice to have options where we can scaffold that experience. And, really, I think at the end of the day, at Gab, we believe that kids should have the very least distracting device that keeps them safely connected. And especially with vulnerable and marginalized communities, single and solo parents, where kids are coming home to, watch out for themselves and that they need a way to be connected, but also protected.
Thanks so much, Holly. So last year, I know Utah passed 2 bills to hold social media companies accountable. And then also in the last legislative session, you passed 2 additional bills that replaced those that had the same sponsors. I was wondering if you, Amy, could talk a little bit about what the goals were with the legislation and what you were changing. Because again, I know Utah's been a leader here, and I think it'll be interesting for other states to understand kind of what transpired that led you in a new direction.
Yeah, well, first of all, it was awesome to see how our governor was able to lead out on this as he worked with our legislative leaders. And so we had 2 bills last session. They were first of its kind in the nation, and we were really proud of the work there. What was funny about them, though, is as we started developing these bills and figuring out what we wanted in them, we kind of just threw everything at the wall to see what would stick. And we thought, we're certainly going to have the social media companies who are sending in all their lobbyists. They're going to help us kind of narrow this down and refine and whatnot as we go through the process. Well, they were so popular that these bills just sailed through the process, easily passed both bodies. And we didn't get a lot of helpful feedback from the social media companies. Of course they opposed it, but they were fairly easy to get through and very bipartisan, both Democrats and Republicans supporting the bills. So we had these two bills and we had a delayed implementation date, but during that time we had lawsuits starting to hit our state. And so luckily we had the next session around the corner, the next legislative session, and we were able to look at what was in the lawsuits and some of the potential issues and go through and better refine the bills the second year. And so this last session, just in the last couple of months, we had the same two bills we repealed and replaced with two different bills. And these bills we believe these are great. They're going to do better as far as standing up in court. The laws will require social media companies to enact a strict age assurance process, include default privacy settings, disable addictive features, offer tools for parents to set time limits and see connected accounts, and not collect or sell certain data on minors without parental consent. So that's kind of just the summary of what the two bills will do. They will go into effect October 1st of this year. So it's been quite a process and a lot of work and a lot of support from our legislature and from our residents.
Thanks, Amy. That's really helpful context. And I know, again, a lot of other states are following Utah's lead and watching you guys as a national leader. I do have another question for you. Before I ask, I do want to remind folks in the audience here, if you have questions, please feel free to either raise your hand or leverage the chat for any of our speakers, and I will do my best to try and integrate those questions throughout the session. So Amy, the other question I wanted to ask you was, I know that Utah has a campaign underway that's related to this work. Can you tell us a little bit more about that campaign?
Absolutely. So during one of the governor's monthly news conferences, he announced that we would be doing a campaign to help warn parents of the harms of social media for their kids. We feel like as we tackle this issue, yes, legislation is good, and we need to rein in these social media companies who have kind of had a free-for-all on our kids all these years. But we also feel like it's so important because at the end of the day, these parents are the ones who are going to have to make the hard decisions, just like the First Lady and the governor did with their daughter, to say, you're not ready for social media, and to be able to hold firm there. And so we thought it was really important to help educate parents on this. So we rolled out a campaign this last fall, and basically we started with TV ads. We have some really great TV ads showing what's happening with these kids as they're scrolling, that they may look happy on the outside, but when you take off a mask and really see what's underneath it, they're so sad because they're getting all this negative feedback. And, of course, we're worried about addictive algorithms. And so our website is socialharms.utah.gov. You can go on there. You can even pull the 30-second ad spots that we did, but we did TV ads. We have billboards. You can probably see one here back behind my shoulder that I've got sitting in my office. But we've got all of that on our website. And we started a campaign to really help educate these parents. It was great because about the same time, that's when the Surgeon General came out with his statements. One of his quotes is, "We're in the middle of a national youth mental health crisis, and I'm concerned that social media is an important driver of that crisis, one that we must urgently address." And so we've been able to use a lot of what the Surgeon General has said as well to get that information out to parents, as well as tips and other things. We've been able to, hit the circuit on our doing TV and radio interviews. We also have a parent presentation that we put together that's on that same website that parents can download. Church groups, school groups, parents, whoever wants to use that can. It's basically a plug and play that has all of the data points but also goes through and helps educate on the harms and some things that we recommend for our families. So we felt like that was important. I mean, we are, you know, we have the legislation, we're suing social media companies for harm as well, but we felt like this education piece was an important part of that to go along with those.
Thanks, Amy. That's really helpful information. Dr. Coyne, we did get a question in the chat. I don't know if this is a question you might be able to answer with regard to what are the aspects of social media use that have been found to negatively impact mental health of young users? Is that, I know you said it's a mixed bag, but where are we seeing the negative?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So cyberbullying is probably the number one harm, I would say. A long history of research there. Upward social comparisons, which is the idea that I compare myself to somebody who is prettier, more athletic, goes on nicer vacations than me, and then I feel bad about myself. Radicalization of youth is also an area that is getting more research. And then social comparisons, and then like social media problems. So we know about 10-ish% of youth really struggle to disconnect from social media, so much so that it interferes with their ability to function in their real lives. So that particular group is somebody that I'm really, really concerned about. There's more, but I think those are the main ones.
Sorry, I was speaking on mute there. Holly, I know that Gab has done some research in this space. Can you talk a little bit about the research in Indiana and how the findings can be applied elsewhere?
Absolutely. So we connected with a school in Culver, Indiana, Culver Academies, and they have about 850 boarding students there. And when we began talking with them, we found that we had a mutual interest in finding out what would happen if kids took a break from their personal technology in some way. And so they worked with student leaders, and they came up with a list of options that ranged all the way from changing their screen to black and white to deleting social media. And then we had 130 of the 850 kids who you know, handed over their iPhones and got a Gab device, which has no social media or internet browser. And so for about 35 days, they, the kids all participated in these various ways. And as you can imagine, it was great to hear from the faculty who said the campus seemed more lively. And our research showed that these particular children high school students were spending 5 hours a day on social media prior to the phone fast. And that that decreased for all students to 3.5 hours, and then to the kids with Gab phones to 1 hour a day, because they could still access it on their laptops. And we saw a benefit to mental health and well-being, sleep, and healthy connection with peers and with faculty. And it was really great to do interviews and focus groups with kids 2 months post-test. And one young man, 14 years old, he shared with us that prior to having a Gab device, he said, I just stayed in my room and I just was on my phone and I wasn't very happy here. But he said, I was so bored on my Gab device. I made myself go out and make friends. And he got a little bit emotional, and he said, and they're some of the best friends I've ever had in my life in these, in that 3-month period, since he, did that experiment. And they had such great ability to kind of talked about it in before and after. And many of them said, I went back to my old ways. I went back to social media, but now that it's been a couple of months, I've deleted TikTok. I've deleted Snapchat. What do I care if I have a snap streak? Those people really aren't my friends. They had this really great ability to, kind of reflect. And we also saw that they had universally, all the way from trepidation to tremendous anxiety about getting their iPhones back. They described it as having another job, and that, you know, they were very anxious about it. And one thing that I think was really profound was the concern that they expressed for their younger siblings. They talked about, well, if my parents had known, they never would have, you know, let me have social media, or my parents don't know that I have social media. They think I don't. And if they knew, and if they knew the way that it has made me feel, then, you know, they talk about not wanting that. They call their younger siblings iPad kids. And my own daughters who babysit say, oh, I was just at so-and-so's house and they have iPad kids. And so I don't know if that's universally used around the country, but I think it's very telling. And that these students that we worked with, they want autonomy, but they are looking to the adults in their life for some boundaries. And, you know, I would also say that the majority of them said, I got social media way too early. I wasn't ready for it. And this is the way that has impacted me. And some of those ways were small and some of them were tragic. And so, like Dr. Coyne has said, it just, you know, that especially that 10% with the problematic social media use, you know, they're particularly vulnerable. And of course, we know children of color and face additional threat of harm on social media. And so that's something that we're looking at too. And so it was just a really incredible experience, and it reaffirmed our commitment that to provide education, resources, and we have a site for schools that is agnostic to the brand. I mean, it says Gab on it, but schools, you can find that in the links, schools.gab.com. We have an offering with, or a partnership rather, with Health and Human Services with federal funds that will provide watches for kids with developmental disabilities like autism who have a tendency to wander. And from Kevin and Avante's law that was refunded in 2022, that parents can request a GAB watch, and the county that they're in uses Health and Human Services funds to pay for that. But the parent is the account holder and manages those controls.
Thanks so much, Holly. And again, encourage folks, as you've got questions from what you're hearing, please feel free to add into the chat. So we have a question here that, Amy, I'm going to turn this one to you. Dr. Coyne spoke about how social media can be protective for marginalized populations. So asking about, in the context of that, the social media harms campaign and whether that's being addressed to help those kids at all.
Yeah, well, we actually believe that the risk of harm to those vulnerable populations is higher than any protective factor that social media can provide to them. So, you know, right now it's a free-for-all, and you don't know which kids are going to be harmed more drastically from the algorithms. So to say that, you know, because they're vulnerable that they should have it, we actually disagree as the state of Utah. We believe that that's not safe for kids. And so we don't have, our campaign is solely addressed on encouraging parents to pull their kids off of social media. And we have ways that tips we've given on how to wean kids off of that. But we don't believe that it's safe for children, you know, as we've talked to, again, the professionals, school administrators, mental health professionals, and others. We just don't believe that it is. So.
Thanks, Amy. I appreciate that clarification. Dr. Coyne, as adults, can you talk a little bit about what examples we can set for kids when it comes to screen time, social media, technology in general?
Yeah, happy to. So we published a report with the Wheatley Foundation at BYU, and maybe they'll pop it in the chat, really looking at different aspects of child social media use and then parent social media use. And we found that parent social media use was actually a better predictor of adolescent depression and anxiety than child social media use was. We also found that parent technoference is a really strong predictor of negative adolescent outcomes. And what technoference is when technology interferes with interaction or communication, right? So if I'm sitting here and I'm talking to y'all, and then I'm like, just kidding, I got to, text on my cell phone and I'm tap, tap, tap. I mean, what does that show? It shows that whatever's on my phone is far more important than you all right here. And so before I got on this call, I put my phone on airplane mode to make sure that I could be present. So we know that both parental social media use and the behaviors around that impact. The other thing I want to mention is that when parents talk to their kids about social media use, their kids tend to have really positive outcomes, far lower levels of depression, anxiety, better body image, lower levels of conduct disorder. And so what that means is we talk about the hard things, right? We talk about, okay, right, this kid keeps texting you and you want to help him because he has a really hard home life, but also the texting is kind of getting overwhelming and it feels like that second job, kind of what Holly was saying here. How do I manage that as a parent? Instead of just saying, just get off your phone. I know it's way more complicated than that, right? As youth today, it's so much more complicated than that. So parents who are willing to kind of step in and have those bigger conversations and to have kids that are healthier users of social media and better outcomes. And I'll say one last thing about two more things. The other thing is that parents who have high levels of rules and restrictions tend to have kids that have higher levels of depression, worse anxiety, and worse body image. So we know, especially in adolescence, really high levels of restriction tend to backfire. And so they'll often just view it at a friend's house or have to try to hide it or sneak it. And they have this shame and guilt or so on. It really impacted the way that I parent my own kids, actually, right? Like I said, I've been doing this research for 20 years. I have 5 children, 3 of them are teenagers right now. So I guess a different view from Mrs. Cox, all 3 of my kids have social media. And I think it's a really personal decision that every family needs to make on their own. For me, I wanted to focus more on helping them learn how to thrive in a digital media environment, as opposed to just getting them off it. My goal for them is when they're 18, they enter that adult space kind of prepared, as opposed to it's my first time and I don't know how to use it. And again, every single family is different. Every child is different. Depends on the kid, depends on their developmental level, all sorts of different things. This is a dance, I think, that all of us struggle with. And we all just want to do the best thing for our kids. The last thing I'll say about parenting is the #1 predictor of positive adolescent outcomes was parental warmth and support. Had nothing to do with phones, nothing to do with media. Just if you're there for your kid, you're responsive, you're loving. And so I think that's really powerful to remind ourselves as parents, we struggle with this, right? If you're there for your kid, it's really protective in a lot of ways.
Thanks, Dr. Coyne. And I think those of us who work on Pathways to Resilience and who focus a lot in the trauma space know that community and family is definitely a protective factor. It's one of the most important things for children, absolutely. So anecdotally, I'm just going to add my 9-year-old foster daughter had to do a project recently, and she was allowed to pick any topic, and she picked about the topic of addiction to social media. And I'm not going to share the slides that she developed, but it was really interesting to watch her learn and watch sort of the wheels turn in her head to understand, oh, here's why my parents don't want me on more Minecraft, or what more about technology. But it's an interesting thing. And I think no matter what, those conversations are important, no matter what direction parents decide to go. I see we have another question here from First Lady of Delaware, Tracy Quillen Carney, asking whether there's any research on how AI will impact the issues related to social media, or is it too soon to know? Does anyone feel like they can weigh in on this one?
Sure, I can weigh in. So this was discussed at that National Institute of Mental Health meeting I was just asked. People are just barely getting into this space, and they're really looking at the ways that children use voice assistant technology. So like Alexa, right? So kind of starting even younger and younger and kind of the implications of that. And then also predictive text, things like ChatGPT. And so, some youth are like using those types of things to carefully construct what they want on social media and how it's going to look and curate it and refine it and things like that. It is really soon to know. We know that they're using it. We know something else that we know is that there are AI accounts. I research particularly the effect of social media on body image. And some of the AI accounts are pretty horrific. And so we talk about unrealistic beauty standards, you know, that we see in film or television or magazines. AI presents a whole new problem. And so the importance of digital literacy, critical thinking, and then also legislation aimed to limit access to those kind of sites, I think is really, really important as we move forward.
Anyone else have anything you want to add with regard to AI? I don't know how much that's been a focus at GAB or at the state level.
We're very concerned when we see social media apps that you can become a friend with a bot, and that, you know, that's some scary stuff, and really, you know, we want to have devices that support in-person connection, and when there is connection online, that it's with real human beings. And, you know, AI is a tool that we definitely want kids to learn how to use to leverage, you know, but it's it would be very easy. I can think of one of my children who would you know, struggles to make social connections, and I could see this child relying on an AI connection that feels so close to reality, but is really an empty promise of connection. And so that's concerning to me as a parent, and also for us at GAP.
Amy, I don't know if you wanted to add anything there.
No, I was just going to add, we're researching this right now to really get a handle on AI for multiple, you know, overall. But there's a lot of concerns there too. I mean, there's like Holly mentioned, there's some interesting and potentially scary things that are happening related to that, and we want to make sure we protect our kids at the end of the day. So we're watching that closely and research.
Fantastic.
I could.
Oh, go ahead, Holly. Or was that Holly?
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to also add that, you know, we know kids are going to make mistakes online, and just like all of us, right? We learn how to get up when we fall down. And so I think what Dr. Coyne said about being open and warm and supportive, and, you know, being willing to have conversations about how will a particular app affect you, you know, tell us why you want this. And those kind of open conversations are so important to helping kids develop a healthy relationship with technology. And for us as adults, you know, we can learn from them too. I know, I bet everybody on here can identify with a child saying to us, you know, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. And so that's really good feedback from kids, isn't it?
Amy, I see there's a question in the chat that I'm going to kind of combine with my next question that I had for you. So I know that collaboration across agencies and departments is for so many initiatives can be really important to help shape policies. And as we think about other states leaders who are on the call today, I'm curious what recommendations you have for others who are considering similar action. And as part of that, there's a question here just about whether or not there's any focus on, you know, youth directly as opposed to just parents. And if so, maybe that's something that's been worked on in a collaborative manner. So thoughts there.
Yeah, happy. In fact, I'll take Jennifer and Amy's questions if that's okay in this, Lauren, in the chat. But first of all, as far as collaboration, it's key. I mean, anytime you need to do something big, especially in government, you've got to have your agencies involved. You have to have, you know, a strong leader, a governor. We love that we have a strong leader in our governor that is not willing to back down and knows like what needs to happen and is willing to go for it. But his relationship with our legislature is really important. He has a good relationship with our legislative leaders, and they meet regularly. They talked about the social media stuff, you know, before the legislation was even drafted, and he got some consensus there, which I think is so important. As we did our social media campaign, that campaign is done by the governor's office, but also we have the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Commerce involved in that. So it impacts all of these different agencies. I'll just quickly hit Amy's question. She's asking, oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to start with Jennifer's. She asked if Utah has a possibility of connecting the Safe UT app as a resource for youth facing internet crimes and other social media concerns. Yes, we have an app, for those who don't know. It's called Safe UT, where kids can download it, have it at their disposal, and they can text, and it goes to a professional who they can report things. They can talk about, you know, if they're feeling down, if they're having struggles. Anyway, it's a great resource, but whenever they report things related to school incidents or whatever, it goes to the school administration. So it's a great way for us to be able to have this communication with our kids and give them a resource that they can access at any time. We do have lots of different campaigns going on in Utah. We have the Live On campaign, which is talks about mental health, and so that's a big one too. And anytime we advertise any of these campaigns, we talk about the Safe UT app as part of it. Amy asked about increase in digital exploitation and online predators gaining access to our kids, even through gaming apps like Roblox. And if we're looking at legislation to address this, actually Roblox is in our social media legislation that we just did. So they have to follow and comply with the same rules because people are able to access children. So we've already got that in there. So thanks.
Thanks, Amy. I want to pose a question to our audience as well, and then I'm going to go to my next question. But I'm curious for people. I know we have 4 people from Utah right now. It's a coincidence. Well, 2 of them are not. We have the First Lady and so represent from the state, but otherwise it is a coincidence. But I'm curious about folks in other states about your experience with legislation. Has it been coming up in your states? Are you following the lead of Utah? So welcome comments in the chat, or if people want to go off mute or raise your hand while I go to my next question. So my next question is a little bit connected to very connected to what we've been talking about, but a little bit different nuance. So before the event, we had a lot of questions about the benefits of social media and how youth can feed their social media algorithm to receive high value content from trusted sources. I know this is a contentious issue rather, and we know that nothing is really fail-safe when it comes to kind of feeding your social media. But just wondering if anyone or all of you, any of you want to speak to this issue.
Well, I'll just say quickly, the algorithms are our biggest complaint right now, because we've got kids who, we've got parents suing social media companies right now who, you know, their kids were fed information that they believe led to their suicide. We have so many eating disorder issues where kids are, you know, looking into diets and it leads them down this path. We have predators who are accessing our kids and the algorithms are getting them there. Like there's so many issues with the algorithms. That's one of our biggest complaints with the social media companies. And I don't believe that there is a safe way to use social media and curate your algorithm to make it have positive content as of right now.
Now I'll add on to that. I've got a graduate student, her name's Jane Shawcraft, and she's kind of researching this at UC Davis. And they pretended they were different ages of children. And then they put different things, right? Searched up different things and then saw what the algorithm fed them. And just like Amy was saying, you know, if you're looking for dieting or eating disorder content, the stuff is horrendous that just feeds you. On the other hand, they were able to get some feeds that were pretty positive. So if you're searching things like, you know, helping others or, you know, pro-social behavior, there's a lot of body positive accounts, which is a direct counterpoint to kind of the eating disorder concerns. So a site I follow is Upworthy, right? And it's a wonderful social media account all about helping other people. And based on that, then it links to all these other things. So my social media feed right now is full of people helping people. And again, I'm a grown-up, right? So I can figure that out. The unsuspecting 12-year-old is very, very different But I do believe there are some things that kids can do to try to insert positive things while recognizing there still is going to be a risk regardless of what you do.
So I think my analogy here, Dr. Coyne, and the other things is like when our kids do research, helping them understand like government websites are typically good sources of information, academic institutions. So if you are going to let your children use social media, helping them curate is probably the best strategy. But in the end, we don't truly have control, I think, is kind of a fair statement. So there's no fail-safe mechanism. I see we have Preston Dillard III. You have your hand raised. Do you want to come off mute and ask a question?
Yes, ma'am. I work I work with a local government agency, and they have what you call a two-step authentication. So anytime the kid logs in on the internet, the parent will be notified. Or when they put their password in under their username, the parent would have to authorize that. The child could still put in their password, but the parent would have to authorize it. So anything that's being filtered to that child, the parent would know about it. In the same way, like with the SEOs, if certain words are mentioned, the parent will be notified so that it would give them a nudge so that they could take a look and look at the content. It may not be bad, but certain language and words will raise an eyebrow and cause the parent to monitor what the child is looking at. So I don't think it's impossible for us to manage that because businesses and companies, they do it all the time with security features to protect their intellectual property.
That is one strategy.
Lauren,
Can I respond to that really quickly?
Yeah.
All I will say is that in Utah, that in these laws that we passed, it really is all about parental control. And so I actually love that, and that's the guiding principle around this. Is we're not saying in Utah that no kid ever can have social media. I mean, but what we're saying is that right now the social media companies are going around parents. And what we'd like to see is that parents have the control. If you're a parent and you're like, yeah, my kid, I'm fine with the algorithms, I'm fine with how they do things, I'm fine with it, then yeah. But the problem is the social media companies for far too long have gone around the parents. So Preston, I'm in absolute agreement that, as parents, it's our responsibility to make sure that those are happening, but also that social media companies need to be held responsible for those dangerous algorithms, that they are doing that very much on purpose, and that it really is, we can do both. We can have parents making sure that those kids, and again, giving them love and connection, but also making sure that we have the tools to stop those algorithms, and that the companies can stop using those algorithms on our children. And then once those are done, then that may look very different.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. It's the same stance that we have to take with tobacco. How the tobacco companies strategically market to kids, making candy, cigarettes. It's like it's gum, but you're prepping our kids to start smoking, knowing the harmful effects that it has. And it's the same way what you're explaining with the social media. You want to put them in check and make sure that there's a check and balance there. And I agree with you 100%.
Thanks so much, Preston.
I loved your information, Preston, and First Lady Cox. We can empower kids with the information. I remember being a third grader and coming home and telling my father, you have to be done with the cigarettes. I learned in school today that it's going to kill you and you're going to leave us to be orphans. And I hounded him for a year because the school empowered me. And I believe that we can do the same thing in schools, and we can give parents tools on a Gab device. If your child receives, someone attempts to send them a nude photo, or they attempt to send a photo, then you will get an alert as a parent. That's a tool that I definitely need. But at the end of the day, parents know their children best, and they'll know when they're ready for the next step in technology. but we have to have ways where we can be connected and not, you know, have kids, all kids are vulnerable, right?
Thanks so much, Holly, and Mrs. Cox. I saw Leslie Knotts in the chat added that an example in Georgia about a new law that's going into effect. So that will be something interesting for us to watch, where youth under 16 will need parent or guardian permission to use social media. So focuses on age verification. So thank you for sharing that, Leslie. My next question is again for all of you. So would love to hear your thoughts about the role of government evolving in response to the changing dynamics of social media. And what do you think states should be kind of thinking about in general? Not every state has gone through this legislative approach, but how can they work with the technology company or with universities on research, or what else can we be doing here, just from all of your perspectives as state leaders?
Well, I'll just say one of the things that we've heard a lot from social media companies as they've been talking to us is that they're not willing to have a stricter platform unless their competitors are. So they're basically saying government's going to have to rein this in, because nobody's going to be the first and risk losing those consumers to a different platform. And so while I think, you know, I would hope there's good intent on their part to want to protect children, so far we're not really seeing a huge effort there. But at the end of the day, we have to recognize that there is, you know, fear of them losing customers if they put some of these things into place. And it's going to take government overall reining everybody in for them to do it. So that's just one thing that maybe I'd add to the conversation, that we have to recognize that we're going to have to do something.
Go ahead, Dr.
I'll
Quinn.
add, oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll add two things. I'm not in government at all, but from the research side, I think we have a lot to learn from other countries. I've got colleagues who are researching laws around social media in South Korea as compared to here. And other countries have different laws that we can learn a lot from. For example, the impact of social media on mental health is less in South Korea than it is in the United States, perhaps because there's a little bit more legislation around that issue. We also know that England and Europe are doing some really powerful things around children's privacy. I would love to see us emulate that here. And then on the research side, so funding for research on the impact of social media on mental health is really important. Luckily, the government just passed the CAMERA Act, I think after decades of trying to get it in. And so as a researcher, I hope that funding continues, because technology constantly changes. And so as a media researcher, I have to pivot all the time. And it's thrilling and exciting and also difficult.
Thank you. And I have one
Add to that, I will just say that in Utah, because we were the first in the country to do these really robust laws, we've heard from, in fact, we heard from the president that he, you know, as we had a conversation with him, he was looking at the legislation that we passed and wants to be, you know, as the country wants to be more proactive in using some of this going forward. So I don't know what'll come up of that, you know, come of that. I hope, you know, as a country, we can come up with that, like in South Korea, you know, to your point around, you know, these laws that the media companies will have to comply with in order to do business here. And I hope that we do that. Sadly, states have to do a lot of that because there just hasn't been a lot of real high function in the Congress as of late. And so it really has fallen a lot on the states to do these things. And it's great that we're doing them. It would be better, I think, as far as the social media companies are concerned, you know, that I think it would be better for a broad law overall, in my opinion, but.
Thank you, Mrs. Cox. So my final question that I always like to ask, and if you already have shared your final thoughts, that's okay, but I did want to go around and give you each one more opportunity to share one or to key takeaways or practical policy considerations for policymakers. So Holly, let's start with you.
So I'm a former school teacher like Mrs. Cox, and you know, at GAB, we would like to see digital literacy, requirements and education, and more support for teachers as they look to ways that they can help kids. Again, that thinking about how powerful the Great American Smokeout content was for me and for my family. And my dad did quit smoking, by the way. And so that was a real victory. But we would like to see. We found that 80% of we surveyed 1,000 people, I think. 80% of parents don't know that there are devices that are actually made for children. And so really, so many of us have felt kind of a sink or swim, and we'll try to slap some parental controls on. And anyone with a teenager with an iPhone knows that parental controls are easily vented by kids. And so we would like to see kids understanding, the difference between bike safety and driver's ed, that they would know that there are things that are appropriate for their use that will help them connect, and that someday they'll be ready, but just not yet.
Thank you. Dr. Coyne, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think I've got two. So I would love to see legislation requiring companies to release algorithms. We've talked a lot about algorithms and how they can be really dangerous, but they're not going to share them with anyone. And as a researcher, I would love to be able to learn and study and understand what makes it addictive and what makes it not, and how can we make it better, and all these things. And then also release de-identified data. They collect, billions of data on all of us. So as a researchers, we would love to get to see that and find out what is the real impact going on here. My secondary, I would love is, so if I was like president of the universe, right? I would love legislation around digital literacy, just like Holly said. And not just one class, which I think is what we have in the state of Utah, but starting as early as age 3, every single year to every single student in America, and very well-funded, high-quality digital literacy education to help our kids thrive in this digital media environment. They can feel empowered. And it's based on development, and it involves teachers and parents and youth and researchers and all of these things. So if you guys want to vote for me for president and give me lots of money to do that, I'm happy to do that.
President of the universe too. All right, Amy, what are your final thoughts?
I would totally vote for you, Dr. Coyne. So as far as practical considerations for people who may be on this call who are with the state governments, I would just say, if you don't have legislation yet in your state to hold social media companies accountable, please start building your coalition and getting there. One of the reasons why we need as many states as possible to do their own thing with this is because until we can get social media companies at the table with Congress saying, help us, we've got all these patchwork approaches throughout all these states, and we need one policy on the federal level that everybody can agree on. Like, we need them at the table. And when they have to comply with all these different rules in different states, it's going to get them to the table. So please work on legislation in your state if you don't have it already. And then the second thing I would just say is, one of the things that we found as we're trying to encourage kids to not use social media for everything, one of the things that we're finding is a lot of our school districts are using social media as the way to inform kids about activities, or using, Discord, which isn't a super safe platform for kids, to communicate with sports, or Snapchat, or all these different social media forums. And what they need to do is to find one that's a safe thing to use. So for instance, we have a company called Schoolbinder here in Utah that does, it's an app. And so they can have all of the school events, and there's a place you can post pictures, but there's no comments, there's no likes, and it has to be approved by an administrator. There's ways that kids can chat with at least 2 adults and their team, if they're on a team for the school. there's just other ways that kids can get information. And I think we need to start moving in that direction so that we're not keeping kids beholden to social media to find out about events and other things. So there's just two ideas.
Thanks so much, Amy. And Mrs. Cox, anything else you wanted to add?
Really quick, I know we're at time, but I will just say as a parent, one of the things that we've been looking at, my husband and I, is unstructured play. There's a lot of new research around unstructured play, especially in those younger grades and those younger kiddos. We need to make sure our kids are out there playing outside. That will do a lot to get rid of this. I said I don't allow my daughter to have social media. She's every chance she gets to be with her friends and actually socialize. The answer is absolutely yes, go out and socialize. So I think we're talking about all the negatives. What we need to do is replace those with the positives, replace those with the really important things that we know help our kids in their brain development and their social development. We see from companies all the time that kids don't know how to interact with people in a positive way, in the best ways. They don't know how to communicate. And that's because they are spending too much time in the digital world and less time in the real world. And so that's, especially as a parent, that's what I would encourage.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Cox. I want to thank all of our speakers. This has been a fantastic session with a lot of really useful information about what's going on in the world of social media and youth. Again, this was recorded. It will be available on our website, the Pathways website. I also just want to remind everybody that our next session is going to be June 18th at 4 p.m. Eastern, and we will be focusing then on retention of foster parents and kin as well. So another really important topic, and hope you will all join then. Thank you so much to everyone for your participation today. Have a wonderful and safe afternoon. Thank you.